Because I understand you're picking up the ball, though, in many ways with Project Censored. Is that correct?
Well, Project Censored is pretty much going international. We now have 30 affiliate universities worldwide, and those universities have instructors with classes that will validate independent news stories. They're posted on our Media Freedom International site, which is part of Project Censored. And those are news stories that have been looked at by university professors and verified that, yeah, that is a valid story. So we're looking pretty much at independent media. There's there's thousands of independent news sites, and most people don't know who to trust. So that's probably the biggest question in the last 15 years I've had. Well, who do you trust for news? And we have a news site where we have 26 independent sources that we trust: Christian Science Monitor, BBC, The Guardian, and that have daily news feeds. So that's our newspaper. That's where I have my students go and read the news, because they're not reading newspapers, regularly at all. Class of 30, I might have one that reads a daily newspaper. But they do read online, and then we Twitter from that, and we Facebook from that, so people can get a news feed or a topic of their choice and follow up and go through and read the entire thing. So we're moving electronically. We're still going to do our annual book, which is the Censored book. But now when the universities nominate a story, it goes on the website first. So this year we had 324 stories, and then the universities and the students will vote on all the stories to pick the top 25. So it's an online process, and then we have the college professors and our national judges who've been with us for a lot of years. They're voting like right now to rank the top 25 for the book that'll come out in the fall, which we'll call 2011.
And are you among the pioneers of Project Censored?
No, I took over after Carl Jensen had been running it for 20 years. He was the founder in 1976. He's still with us. He's still on our board of directors. I did it for 14 years, and now Mickey Huff from Diablo Valley College is the actual director of Project Censored, and I'm president of the foundation that raises the money to support the project.
What are some of the alarming stories that we can expect to see for the next edition?
One that's kind of emerging is the environmental impacts of the U.S. military, and particularly in Afghanistan and Iraq. The Iraq War actually creates more CO2 gases, global warming gases, than two-thirds of the countries of the world combined, let alone a lot of toxic material, depleted uranium, and long-term chemical damage in the country. The environmental pollution impacts of the U.S. military make them the largest polluter in the world, and that's significant. That's really something. I mean, it has long-term impact. Just depleted uranium alone, and equivalent of thousands of Nagasaki bombs left in the sands in Iraq and Afghanistan and in Serbia, for that matter. They're going to be there for half a billion years. And so already in the city of Fallujah, we've got 1 out of 4 children born there today has a birth defect. So these are huge, human rights problems in a very big way.
Do you believe that there is a threat in man-made climate change?
There's always a threat when man starts messing with nature in a way, whether you're doing genetic engineering or GMO seeds or climate change in some capacity. I'm not sure you always understand what the long-range impacts will be on the impact. So I'm very suspicious of that. I'm very careful. I'm a sociologist, not a scientist. But my general suspicion is that that's something you have to be very careful of.
So just to clarify, it sounds like you're unsure about whether or not the global warming scare or threat of climate change, sea levels rising, is related to man-made.
No, I'm quite convinced that it is man-made. That's not what I meant. I thought I guess I was thinking that some of the environmental changes that are proposed to try to correct that, like cloud seeding or creating clouds and that kind of stuff, that worries me. When you start really deliberately changing, I think that we have to make major changes relative to the impacts that we're having worldwide, and the use of carbon fuels is certainly one of the biggest problems.
Are you referencing chemtrails by making clouds? Is that what you mean?
Chemtrails, yeah. There's some ideas that you can create cloud layers that'll block the sun and prevent global warming. and that would be scary to me.
That whole prospect of creating a cloud to minimize the threat of man-made climate change.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, that's you're trying to do the same thing to fix the problem that you created in the first place.
What are your opinions on Glenn Beck? Do you, any of your I imagine that you're a teacher.
Yeah.
Any Glenn Beck supporters in your among your students?
Who's Glenn Beck? I'm sorry, but I pay no attention to him.
Okay.
Other than he's an entertainer, and he's what we would call. We wrote a chapter in our book this year about Rush Limbaugh, and also about counterposing him to Hugo Chavez. And both are treated in the media in a very hyper-real way. In other words, you can't tell what's real and what's not. So from thinking about Glenn Beck, I think of him as hyper-real, who tries to create an excited delirium with him. He can get them all excited and gossiping about stuff and saying crazy things like 9/11 truthers, deny the Holocaust, or we're happy when the Holocaust Museum guard was killed, stuff like that, which is totally crazy. It's just absolutely not true. And so for him, it's a reality problem. And so he creates this sort of excited delirium, but he doesn't tell anybody anything. So it's an excited delirium of knowinglessness.
Among the stories that have surfaced, either from your students or just from your own research, what have you learned of Agenda 21? Have you heard of Agenda 21?
Sorry.
This was the 1993 George Bush Sr. had basically signed the allegiance of the United States to the UN to basically grab property rights, and in case there isn't a national emergency around
I've heard the concept. I mean, I certainly heard the concept, and I think the multinational corporations, which are global, they may be founded in one country, but they operate around the globe. Really don't care about national states, and they've almost become irrelevant. We have American military empire that's 1,000 bases worldwide. It's not to protect the United States. That's to protect global capitalism and European and American-owned companies worldwide, Japanese companies as well, in a global protection and capital control of these multinationals. So, and so if you can use the UN in that capacity, where the U.S. has Security Council vote, that's not going to do it. And they're using NATO in that capacity as well. So the NATO operation in Afghanistan is one of the biggest coalitions of governments ever pulled together in terms of doing war. And so that's kind of the model for the future wars of this multinational corporate power structure. We call it, the global elite of that. And they're repressing all of us. Their wages are going down around the world. You got 3 billion people living on less than $2.50 a day. So you've got starvation and that process. When if the world was shared more democratically, the wealth and there's capacity to take care of everybody.
So, but just to clarify, as a heavyweight in Project Censored, you haven't heard of Agenda 21, which is the actual plan for sustainability, quote unquote. Codex Alimentarius. Have you heard of Codex Alimentarius?
Nope.
What do you know of Obama's origins?
Of Obama's origins?
Correct.
I know that he claims he was born in Hawaii. I heard what Wayne Matson had said about his early involvement with what was considered a CIA front company. Have that been verified? I don't know.
Just one more question for you, Peter. What would you do beyond Project Censored if the mainstream media absorbed its ideals and actually covered the range of issues that we'd expect to see or hope to see?
Well, I'm a political sociologist. Mm-hmm. I studied the power elites in the world. So we did a study on the global dominance group. That was the group, the neocon group during the Bush administration, and who they were affiliated with, and who benefited from those invasions and wars. I would continue to study the power elite. Doing Project Censored is one way of exposing them and talking about that. And it would be wonderful if corporate media would do the same in terms of their, role and under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and of keeping the public informed about what's going on. That's supposed to be information about the powerful, but they are in fact the powerful, so they're not going to do that. Even if we try to reform them, they're not going to do that.
I understand that they probably won't. Nonetheless, I'm hopeful that they do, and that beyond that, you pioneer this next step further. Thank you for the interview, Peter.
Okay, sorry.
Take care.